Hello, happy Tuesday. Welcome back to another episode of The Practice. This show is an unrehearsed, unedited look into my digital art workflow. I'm Stuart. I'm a 3D artist, designer, illustrator, animator, and your friend. And I'm excited, as always, to get into another episode this week of creating awesome digital art live with you guys. So, thanks for tuning in. Lots of fun stuff in store for today. Got a little sketch from yesterday all fired up, so I know what I'm going to work on. But before we dive into that, I wanted to take just a quick minute and share with you a recent series of illustrations with a corresponding 360 VR video that I released late last week. So if you have a moment, please check that out. I'm calling it Titans. It's actually the first time I've done a project like this, and the idea was that we'd create a series of renderings, more typical sort of 2D illustrations, and we'd also release at the same time with these illustrations a corresponding 360-degree YouTube video that you can view like in a VR headset. So these are loading slowly, which is lame, but you can see the illustration here. Hey Tedzar. And then, yeah, so there's three of these illustrations, each of which is in a similar color palette and mood, obviously. And then going along with those is this 360-degree YouTube video that is actually rendered from inside those same scenes. So you can actually, either in your Chrome browser or in your VR headset, you can take a closer look at these scenes and sort of look around the illustrations, if you will. There's two shots of each of the images inside of this video. So check out the channel page and you'll catch a link to these. And it is stereoscopic, which means that there is a bit of video for each eye. So there's really a great 3D effect if you do have a VR headset to check it out with. So do me a favor, do yourself a favor, go check these out, share it with a pal. You won't be disappointed. Cool. So back to today's episode. I did a bunch of sketching yesterday, but you'll see this little tiny fella right down here, I think is going to be the inspiration for today's show. Doing a little island scene, right? I've been having a lot of fun with the isometric views that we've been playing with lately. And I want to continue doing that. I was pleased with some of the water effects we were able to achieve. This is going to be a great opportunity to explore some of those skills. So thanks for tuning in. Let's dive in. Hey Left Hand, thanks for joining. Appreciate that. You mean the Titans project? That's kind. Like hearing those kind words. Appreciate it. All right. So island, right? First things first. Actually, let's set up a camera and call it isometric. I find that especially with isometric renderings, it's super helpful to get your camera set up first, because it's not a type of thing that you can really rotate around and get your views squared up. You want to really model to the view. So I think on this island we're going to want a little flat spot, because I definitely want to put a building and stuff like that. So I'm going to work with this plateau level. Give us an island that's a little easier to work with. And you can see I sort of reversed these, which gives us a more rounded edge to the top. It's a bit tall. Also do is sort of drop in this plane to establish a water line. That'll give us a clue as to what bits of this landscape are going to stick above as an island and which one. So, actually this one isn't so bad. I kind of like the shape that this is giving. This is giving us, excuse me. All right. We are going to have an issue with this edge here, I can tell already. This is something we can adjust later with a hypernerve. I'm actually going to turn down the geometry on this guy. Thanks, Tedzar. Appreciate the comment, man. I'm working on another 360 video like that, which is going to have a little bit more going on. It's a simpler style, but still plenty of work left to be done on that. So looking forward to sharing that, though, when it's ready. All right, so the other thing we're going to add to this island is sort of a little house, a little building with a tower. To spend a little time on that. I'm going to start with really basic shapes for now. Just sort of block out some of these components of the building. Actually, I'm going to copy this guy. Oops. Oops. What I'm doing here is actually checking that the angle on the height of this, the top of this tower here is the same as the angle on the top of this building. That seems like a silly little detail to keep consistent, but things like that I think add a lot of harmony and balance to a piece. So there you have it. That's really nice, Talos. Appreciate the kind words. Thanks for tuning in, and that's like, you know, it's exactly what I want to hear. The idea behind this show is it's something that gets me in a routine, a good habit, a good practice, right, to continue making work. And the other idea is that it hopefully would inspire some of the people who watch to do the same, right? So if we're all on the journey together, pushing it in the right direction, learning more and more each week, and I think we're doing the right thing. I think we can only get better, right? And I'm enjoying the process too, so it's really, it works in a lot of ways. We've got a couple little simple buildings here. I'd add a few more just for some interest. I might even add a little dock. Also going to want to add some rocks and a few little details. Got some ideas about how to treat this thing. Let's add some details to this tower. Drop this down and sort of make a little base, a little foundation, if you will. Widen that. Oops. Just make a kind of an arched window here. I'm going to bully out. Let's see if this breaks the whole thing. It's not the cleanest way to do it. Huh, not so bad actually. It might have been time for a quick test rendering already, which is quick. Since this is an outdoor scene, I'm going to be doing what I've been doing a lot recently. It's almost getting kind of embarrassed because I feel like I do this almost every episode, but we're just going to throw in a physical sky. For this type of scene, it works really, really well. I think I'm going to keep it a little bit more overhead than I typically do. I'm not going to do the really deep golden hour kind of stuff. Since we're out in the ocean here, it might make sense to just keep it kind of bright and sunny. Very basic texturing here to get us started. I like to kill the what do you call it, reflection tag typically on these. Just because, especially with the daylight, you often get this kind of an ugly highlight here. I don't love the way that looks. I much prefer this. So it's a start. 20 minutes in, we got something worth looking at sort of already. Let's see here. It's 40 by 40. We start losing detail when we do that. See how that does to smooth some of this stuff out. That's the one downfall with these landscapes. Sometimes they can get a bit kind of janky. That's a start. So I want to add some rocky stuff. The way I've been doing that lately is I've been just taking a shape like a pyramid in a separate file, throwing it in a Voronoi fracture. All of a sudden you've got some great looking rocky kind of shapes. Really simple kind of low poly stuff. Turn colorize off, hit C to expand. All of a sudden you got these kind of cool shapes. What I'm going to do is bring some of these over here, kind of drag them into the coastline. So breaking some of that stuff up a little bit. I want to make sure there is some good sort of overlapping with the rocks and with the landscape. Make sure they really intersect with each other. Because I think I'm gonna be doing a little bit of like a transparent effect into this water a little bit later. And I don't want these things to appear as if they're flying, floating out there in space. It'll look kind of weird. Looks like Len and Craig joined. Thanks for coming back. Getting to the point with these shows where I'm starting to recognize a lot of the names, which is cool. Love that people return, you know? You can probably tell from what I'm doing here, the order of the texture tags on these objects in the object manager actually matters to how they get mapped, how they show up. So see if I go like this. Actually, this one was a bad example because I'm just going to turn the whole thing red. I'll show you with this one, right? If I make a selection, this roof, throw the red color on it, you see that this goes back to our default material, and that's because we're only applying the texture tag to this group, and now that this object in particular only has one texture tag on it, it's going to sort of omit the group applied texture tag. So what I need to do is actually go in here and put the white tag on this object. But you'll see that if it's to the right of the selection tag and the material applied to that selection tag, it's just going to overwrite everything. So I want to drag that over. Have it, you know, I think the object manager gets read, you know, left to right, top to bottom. So it wants to read that first, and then it wants to read that roof color second. So there you have it. Just adding some details here to the houses. I want to kind of break them up so they don't all look so similar. And I do like the really the simplified sort of version of them. I want to keep them fairly minimal, but I don't want them to all look alike. I do kind of want it to look like a town of different houses that are all built in a similar style. So, add little details. The big details. Yeah, it's starting to look more interesting already. Let's see if I can't add another little sort of plateau here. I do want to break up this land mass a little bit. I'm not sure exactly how just yet. Maybe I want to do that. I saved your life. Wow. You're welcome, I guess. How did I save your life? It's very good. I always wanted to save someone's life. There we go. Wondering why that geometry looks so terrible. Put more than one thing in a subdivision surface. I guess you got to group it. Yeah, a few little trees, I think. See how they look on there. So that noise texture is not working just yet on these rocks. You see I added a little bit of diffusion and some noise that I've stretched to this. I think I need to make the global scale a lot smaller. Trees look good. Just trying to add a bit of contrast. You see they're a bit darker than everything. In fact, I'm going to make it a little lighter, that being said. So Tedzar, there is an episode of the practice where we go over that. So if you look through my channel, you'll be able to find one. But what I will say is that when I recorded that initial episode, I had not invested in a plugin for Cinema that is what I used for the most recent 360 videos I did. So there's a few ways you can do that kind of thing and export it from Cinema. The first of which I've covered in an earlier episode, is to bake reflections off of a sphere. So you can use the this tag. You go to let's see, I think it's in here, the bake texture tag. Yep, right here. Cinema 4D tags, bake texture. You put that on a reflective sphere, and you can bake out 360-degree images that are unwrapped. Problem with that is it takes a really long time, and you don't get as many sort of setting options as you would with a typical camera. Now, the other way to go about exporting that type of content from Cinema is to download the Cineversity VR Cam plugin, which is what I just recently invested in and used for that Titans video. Now, it comes with a little bit of a cost, but it's much more flexible and gives you a lot of options. So if you're really interested in making that kind of content, I would suggest investing in that camera rig. Or another way to do it, which is something that I don't know much about, is to download Unity, and you can do sort of proper VR content creation by taking your 3D models over to Unity and then adding those to the sort of a VR workflow. But unfortunately, I'm not going to have a lot of pointers for you on that one because it's not something that I've done before. So hope that helps, whatever small degree. Oops. So let's grab some more rock chunks. I think we do need some more details. I'm going to add some details to the water soon too, I think. still not loving the direction of these shadows either, so I'm going to rotate the sun just a little bit more. See what we get. In terms of adding details, I'm going to do that thing that I always do. Add some bumps. Yeah, I think that shadow direction is a little better. I'm even going to go, I think, a little earlier in the day. So get slightly more overhead shadows. Hmm. I wonder here if we're even starting to over-index on some of the details. I want to keep this nice and clean and simple. I'm wondering if that little pass is maybe too much. I'm going to leave it for now and maybe sort of move on to some other things. Definitely making progress. I'm probably nearing that time in the show where I might throw on physical and GI and see if that helps us a little bit. In fact, let's try physical. Throw that on, see what that gives us in comparison. Sometimes it's super simple, or super similar, I should say. In fact, this one's giving us more noise, which is surprising. All right, let's see. So what I'm going to do is go into overhead mode. I'm going to just trace around the edge of this island and get a nice little water effect. This is similar to the effect that I did in my short film Look to the Sea as well. So let's see. I'm going to go to pen. I'm going to go to B-spline mode. I'm just going to start tracing around. You see the B-spline creates sort of these rounded shapes. They're a bit low. It's actually kind of difficult to see. I'm just going to keep tracing around here. This B-spline. We're going to make some sort of concentric rings around the island. Then what I'm going to do is very simply create an extrusion, point it in the right direction. There we have it. In fact, what I might do is actually tighten that up a little bit, so bring that in even closer. Just going to add a point there, bring some of that in. When you want to make nice rounded curving shapes, I think the B-spline setting is super useful. You know, any old spline, you can just select it, and there's a range of different sort of midpoint interpolation you can choose, which affects how things are going to act from point to point. Now, if I take this from B-spline, just go to linear, so it gives me straight edges. Now, I think even if I go over to Bezier, it's going to give me a different effect, and then now I'm going to have those little handles, right? But I'm going to undo that and keep it a B-spline, because that's what's going to work well for us right now. Great. So the next move is to take this water, which I'm going to label, and make a slightly lighter version of it. In fact, I'm going to make 3 versions of it. This one's going to be the brightest. Then I'm going to duplicate this spline. I'm going to select it. Instead of just scaling it, what I'm going to do is go to Create Outline, and that's going to push out uniformly, or fairly uniformly, from the edge. Then what I need to do is just hit Delete, and that's going to delete the original spline. Let's see what that gets us. First, And now we're creating a little bit of a coastline, which I think is going to look nice. So that water looks a bit flat. I think that helps. Now what I don't love is, well, we've got a little bit of Z fighting here, but we've also got a bit of shadowing, which is unnatural for the water, right? The water wouldn't really have a little shadow like that. So I think the move, to get everything organized, let's zoom in on this water right now. Get it just as close as possible. Which is going to help. But then what I'm going to do, I'm going to take these, add a composition or a compositing tag, and just turn off cast shadows. And that should take away that little edge, make it look more like water. Now, there's probably a way to do this with a shader. I don't know it. It looks like we're slightly off center too. So I'm just going to take everything except, let's try this. I'll take everything except for that main water plane. In fact, I could even move that water plane, but it's zeroed out, so I'm going to leave it where it is. I'm just going to center this up a little bit. I could also move the camera, which might be the easier thing to do, but center it up a little bit. That looks much better. Look at that. A little island home, making progress. Oops. I'll lock that ratio first. I'm going to do one more rendering like this, and then I'm going to throw on that GI. Everything's going to start looking a lot nicer, I think, when this GI goes on. Usually does. A lot of the colors are going to hit harder. You're going to get much more realistic light. Now, of course, everything's going to take longer to render. What's the price you pay? Yeah, especially the shadowed areas. They start getting a little bit of a light bounce, which is what GI does for you. I'm going to go darker on those trees now because everything's got a little lighter. Perhaps these trunks are a bit too dark. I'm going to add a bit of noise to the sand too in the diffusion channel. Kind of a sandy color. Make it very small, of course. I'm not loving the way this is intersecting the top edge of that mountain, at least visually. So I'm just going to alter this coastline a hair, get it where I want it. I'm just sort of grabbing both layers at once because that's making it a bit easier on me. Some of these buildings need a bit more detail as well. I like the way that tower looks, but some of these are still awfully plain. Let's get in there. Add a bit of interest. Let's see. I'm going to borrow one of these for the archway guys. I really like that shape as a window. There we go. Wasn't loving that roof. I do like overall the little details that we're adding. I think one last thing we need to do is add those arches to one other place. Oops. Make a copy of that guy. Bring it over here towards this house. There we go. It's not going to be perfect, but I'm going to use this center point to sort of line it up. There's the house. You can see the center point. So there we go. That's pretty darn close to center. I'm thinking I think I like that overall shape a lot better than the square one that was below it. All right, let's see how that looks. I'm going to turn the gamma up to 1.2 on GI. See a little bit of a brighter look. That gamma just means, I mean, it sort of means how bright your image is going to become. It's how to describe it. It's how, I guess it's how far the light rays will bounce in your model. You can see that difference right here, even in the shadows. You can see just a little bit lighter, a little more distance on the balance of the lighting. Looking good. So now I'm going to do something that I think it's going to really hurt our render times, but I think it's going to make this image look really cool. And we could do it with reflection, but I'm going to do it with alpha, which is going to save us a little bit in terms of, you know, the computational expense. So let's see, we'll just add a simple color, which you can see all of a sudden gives us some transparency here. And if we're adding transparency, we want to go to ambient occlusion, tick this evaluate transparency box. And now since you're looking through, you can see why I wanted to start making sure that some of these rocks and coastal elements really overlapped. Alright, so we have one more simple rendering test. Before I even get into that, I know that, well, actually, you know what, let's do this. Do test rendering, and while that's working, I'm going to make a few more additions. I decided that I'm not loving this shape, actually. What I'm going to do is swap it out. I think that's going to work a little better for us. Again, I'm just using that center point on the model to cheat the placement of this a little bit. Could go in and center it out, but you know, I feel like getting into all that. There's maybe a little doorway detail on this guy. And let's check in with the transparency. Look at that. Still calculating. We went from a 38-second rendering so now we're 2 minutes in and we're still chugging along on this. It's going to add a lot of time. Just while that's going, it's fun to go all the way back and see where we started. Look at that. Pretty boring and gray. Details, details, composition, details, and finishing. There we go. Starting to render. What I'm doing now is making these quite thin and turning off the cap underneath, because since we've got an overhead shot and we're dealing with transparency, that each one of these concentric ring layers is actually 2 layers, right? If you think about them having a cap below. So what I'm doing is removing that and making them super thin so that they are as close to just a single flat plane as possible. I think what I need to do is sort of reverse the order. Actually, no, let's not do that just yet. Let's really punish ourselves and give us a depth effect. So let's grab this plane. Let's make a couple copies down. Actually, you know what? I'm going to stop this rendering and just do a very small test. See what we get instead of waiting that whole time. Well, that was surprisingly quick. So what I want to do is layer this up in a way that allows you to see through a bit of it into the water, which as you can tell isn't really happening. Just got to keep messing with these and pushing towards that effect. Let's see what happens when we set them all to 50. And I'm just doing these areas just so I can avoid having to render out all this water around the island, because it'd be a ton of processing to go through. Hey Nikoni, thanks for the comment. Yeah, Cinema 4D indeed. This is the first commenter I've had from Picardo, so that's cool. Thanks for stopping by. We're finally starting to get a bit of that see-through look that I'm after. I'll bring up some of these values just a bit. Actually, you know what I'll do? So we've got 3 water planes here. I'm going to push them a little bit deeper. What I don't want to see is the edge of these landscapes. So I'm going to make sure that this last one is just above the edges of the landscapes. I'm going to duplicate this water and turn off the alpha. This is going to be our final translucent bottom layer. I think I applied it to the wrong one. So there we're starting to get some of that see-through stuff that I dig. This might be a little bit of a crazy workaround, but what I might try here actually is, let's see, so I'm going to duplicate both of these. And I'm going to add a cap to the bottom, make them much deeper. In fact, you know what? I think I'll only need the larger of the two. And I'm going to use that as a bool for these 2 planes. Oops. Let's see how this works. So what was happening before is I want the layers that are closer to the edge of the shore to be more visible. But the more you layer the planes with transparency on them, the more they're going to add up together and become opaque because they're layered on top of each other. They're stacked. So anyways, if we knock out the layers below, hopefully all that stuff just remains nice and visible. Let's see what happens here. There we go. But you're starting to see that layering a bit. which I'm not sure if I love. So I wonder then, let's see. Probably what needs to happen then is this. Maybe that'll work. I tell you guys, this show is unrehearsed and unedited. As we come across little issues and as we try to solve problems to achieve the look we want, we do it live and on the fly. You're learning as I'm learning, for better or worse. That might be better. See how that goes. I think I actually might need to pull another one of those planes out. Whoops. Work called you out? That's funny. No streaming at work. No, stream at work, especially me. Definitely stream me all day at work. So it really is a fine balance trying to get this all working the way you want it to. I'm going to let this one ride out. Let's see how this water goes. See, this is much closer to where we want it to be. You can see we're getting a little bit of see-through on here. It's starting to feel a bit like water, and we're not getting the outer edges of that landmass like we did before. A little bit more alpha on this, a little bit darker, just slightly more visibility through. Same with this guy. Drop it down a little bit, and that's cool too because we improved the speed of the rendering a little bit as well. You can see I adjusted the shadow a little bit too. Rotated that physical sky again. I'm liking some of this stuff, but I wasn't loving the way that this shadow was falling so close to that house. Let's see what this gets us. Yeah, even better. This looks better without the white. We're getting a little bit more see-through, a little bit more transparency. Liking the shadow placement more. Getting there, you guys. We're making progress. Getting there. All right. No, I'm feeling it. I think it might be time to crank up the size just a bit and push out a final rendering. So I'm going to make this 1600 across. Let's just say 2200 across. 1600 is less than 19. So let's do it like this. Let's make this 1600. I'm going to throw this over to progressive. And that should, see, this is a little, some of these areas are a little bit noisy for my taste, some of these shadows. So if I throw it on progressive, typically I can let it run until that noise settles down a little bit. Now the cool thing about progressive rendering is it lets you set a bunch of parameters and then it'll just run. And it'll improve the quality of the shadowing, it'll improve the quality of the aliasing, the anti-aliasing I should say, all that stuff as it just sort of runs. And you can let it run overnight and it'll just slowly keep improving. And I hate to do it because I've been drinking coffee like a maniac all morning. I'm going to run to the restroom ever so briefly while this chugs along. Be back in just a moment. Sorry about that, gang. Some weeks I just can't hold it the full 2 hours. All right, so you can see we're still in progressive pass 1, and obviously it doesn't look great. Once we get through a couple of these progressive passes, you'll see how much sharper everything starts looking. Comes progressive pass 2, running through, proving things for us a bit. I'm going to open Photoshop while that runs. I think in terms of retouching, it's just going to be some very simple color correction. I think we're most of the way where we want to be with this piece. So just going to adjust some of the colors, a little bit of value and saturation control maybe, and then we'll be good. See, I'm liking this effect. You can see a bit of the coastline. You can see some of the rockiness, some of the sand underneath there. I think that's going to give us some nice subtle details. It's a little island colony. And it looks cool. It's still only on pass number 1. I think that's because we've got so much alpha going on here. take a while for these to sort of chug through. All right, now we're on the second pass. This has taken much longer than I had expected, honestly. I would have thought we'd been on 3 or 4 passes at this point, so no worries. But if anyone has any questions, comments, while this is going, what we also do a lot of weeks is if you've got some new work coming out, if you've got a work in progress that you want to share, get some eyes on, feel free to drop a link in the chat and we can pull it up live and share it with the community, and we can also get a little constructive criticism on it if you're so inclined. I don't mind chatting about that stuff for a while. Hey, yeah, thanks for asking. I have many online galleries of my work. My portfolio site is diligence.studio. I've also got a Twitter and an Instagram and a Tumblr. And you know, I think I'm most active on Instagram and Twitter. But if you search for DLGNCE or look in my profile. Oh, actually, you're not on YouTube. You're coming from Picardo, so. I believe I have my work linked up from there, but if you search DLGNCE, you'll find my work all over the place. And that's a good point. You know, I'm very active on YouTube, but I think I'm most active on Instagram. So if you want to keep up with what I'm doing, DLGNCE on Instagram. I post pretty much every day, almost, you know, just about every weekday, and a lot of weekend days too. I'll post. That's a great way to keep up on new projects, work in progress, all that stuff. So check me out there. I think that I can save this out and start color correcting and letting this render in the background. So what I'm going to do, see if that is actually true. That way I can get my colors and my hues and start adjusting contrast. Let this thing keep rendering in the background. Then I can save out another copy. And since I do everything in Photoshop with adjustment layers, I can just drag and drop the new file in. So there we have it. It's still a bit grainy, but we'll let that bad boy keep rendering. We'll make some adjustments. I'll show you the process that I like to take for retouching. It's different depending on the image, of course. But let's see. I always like to go in and add a little bit of blue to the shadows and the curves. Sometimes I'll also add a little bit of red to the highlights. It's really nice here, actually. So we're on past 4, 10 minutes later. Still chugging along. All right, past 5, you can see the noise is a lot better in some of these areas. It's not great. It's not going as smooth as I would have hoped. And I think what I could have done is probably turn up some of the GI settings as well. You know, I'm pleased with how this piece is coming together. I'm gonna let it render for just another minute. We're throwing it in here, try calling it a stream. I wonder if we should also drop down just a hair. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do that cropping after we finish up. I do want to bring that in a little bit. Got a little bit too much background. So that's gone 6 passes. That's going to be enough for right now. You can let it go till to your heart's content, and it'll just keep plugging along and improving. I'm also going to go to 16 bits on this ping, get a little bit more color quality out of it. Let's see. 2. This will be fun too. We'll actually be able to do a direct side-by-side comparison of the quality levels with and without retouching. So that's kind of cool. Now I can just drop that ping right in, send it to the background. Oops. Delete that. Let's compare the two. So turning that layer on and off. See, there's a lot less noise, but there is still some, right? But I think from this perspective, you know, it's acceptable. I'm just going to do just a little bit more retouching. I'm going to add a little bit of noise. Overall, it looks pretty nice a lot of the times. I'm also going to try a little bit of a sharpen filter. Let's see what that gets us. We might not need it. Sometimes it helps to sharpen it just a bit. And I always make it on a separate layer so that way I can turn it back ever so slightly if needed. So let's see what that gets us. Actually kind of like it. It's giving us sort of crisper edges. You can see along like some of these roof lines. You see it's a little bit more contrast, a little bit crisper. Let's do a little bit of that cropping that we mentioned. Down a hair here. I think that looks pretty darn good. Details, details, getting that crop just right. Looking much better. Cool. Well, you know, it's been another fun week. I'm glad we got everyone together to further our practice, keep creating good habits, developing a creative routine that's going to keep us improving our skills and, you know, getting better and getting further in our career and hopefully enjoying the process as we're at it. So thanks again for stopping by. If you liked what you saw, hit like, hit subscribe, hit the bell icon for notifications. Follow me on Instagram, which is where I'm most active socially. That's at DLGNCE. I'm also on Twitter and Tumblr and all those good things. And until next time, I'll see you next week at 9 Pacific, 12 Eastern. This is Stuart saying goodbye. Thanks. See ya.